Good morning, everybody. My name is Sue Sanders, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Lake Ozark, Missouri. And I'm going to be doing a series of an easy way to store your dies so that you know exactly what you have and what their shapes are. So today's first video, let me move this out of the camera view, and I'm suffering with allergies and all that good stuff, so excuse me. So these are our stylish shape dies. I'm sorry. They do have stitching around them, but you have several different styles. You got squares, circles, and labels. Well, these all come on a piece of cardboard like this, and it has some double-sided tape on it, and they stick down on this, okay? Sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're really hard to get off. Sometimes they're not. Well, I was doing a project, and I always have issues with trying to write up the tutorials on how to know which size I want to use. So I came up with this idea that I am doing with all of my die sets that are shapes like this, and then even with some of my other dies. And I'm going to show you what I did there, because this is also a good way of knowing if you happen to have lost a die, misplaced it. I've done that. Yesterday I was working with a die and I dropped one on the floor, and it was a very, very tiny little heart. So I had to get down and really look for that little heart so that I didn't lose it forever and ever. This is also a good way to know that you have all of your dies, so that when you're putting them away, you can kind of see at a glance if you're missing any without having to actually count them. So what I do when I first get my die sets is I take a picture or a copy, and then I cut that, and I just use plain cheap copy paper, and I cut that down to fit inside my envelope that they come in. I also mark my dies, the name of the die set, what catalog it's from, the page number that it's in, and then the cost of it. If it goes into more catalogs and I just handwrite, then it's also in another catalog. And so then this piece of paper will go right there, and it'll set on top of your dies, and you can set that in your envelope. Well, like I said, my struggle was to know how big of a die I needed for a certain project, and if I needed to, what I needed to do to layer them. So I have decided that I am going to take all of my die sets that have shapes that layer, and I have cut them out of a cheap white cardstock that I got from Target. And I cut them all out, and then I numbered them so that I would know that the number 1 was my largest one all the time. That way I didn't have to play guessing games with it. So here's 3, 4, 5, and 6 for my circles, my 1 and my 2. And then this is an easy at glance. Okay, I know that number 2 will layer onto number 1 just perfectly, giving a small border. But then I can also layer number 3 on that number 1 and get a larger border around it. Same way with that, with the squares. I cut the banners out the same way, so I know that banner 4 will layer on banner 3. Layer 2 can also banner on layer 3. And so this also gives you kind of like a, what do I want to say? A template type thing where you can lay your different dies out and get a better feel for how you want to do your layout and if a stamp is going to fit on there, because you can lay a stamp right on top of these and see if it's going to fit. Okay. And I am just storing these in one of the Stampin' Up! Plastic envelopes that seal up. And then I've just marked that with the name of the die set that it goes with. And I can stick that right into my plastic envelope so that it's right with my dies. So there we have it. So that is the way I can store all of my shapes and all of my dies together, and I know what I have. The layering diorama set, it was another one that was kind of hard because you have to kind of play with seeing how it layers. Sorry for my dog barking. But I've cut all of them out and I've numbered them. The largest one is always number 1. And then when I'm also doing a tutorial, I can say you can use the layering diorama dies and use the number 1 die, which is the largest. And that gives them an idea. Okay, so that is my tip for today, to organize your dies. Come back next week and I will have another tip to share with you on storing your dies. Have a great week.